One of my memories of Northeast Portland along Williams and Vancouver, I had a friend who I went to high school with. We were good friends in high school. His dad owned some property along Williams, the old House of Sounds, a couple other buildings along there. And after high school, he left Portland and only came back when his dad got really sick. And I remember running into him and talking to him, and he was talking about how he hated Portland and he wanted to just get out of here, wanted to get rid of that property. And I said to him at the time, I was like, man, if you sell this property, this neighborhood's gonna go.
Even when I lived in Portland as a teenager, I was too white for the black kids, too black for the white kids, and I just never felt like I fit in.
Never wanted to take over the world, just wanted to kick a dent in it.
This is my voice, and if you think I'm going to use your voice, you got the wrong person.
Rather than trying to create a world that works for me, I wanted to create a world that works for more than me.
Well, the majority of the whites in that area were shocked to know that I had gotten into their neighborhood.
I'm telling you, when we were little, I'm telling you, downtown Portland, it's racism.
And I ended up in Portland initially when I was about 14 years old. My mother moved me and my other 7 brothers and sisters to Portland. My dad had passed away unexpectedly, and she had gotten a job in Portland.
I got turned in to housing because I had a lot of tall black men coming in and out of my apartment, which were my brothers. They just assumed that these tall black men were a danger or a threat to them.
Everybody I encountered in Camden was black. And so my notion of creating a world that worked was creating a world that works for black people. You know, I had a TV, we could watch the TV and we could see all the white people on TV were having a ball.
When I was in grade school, or I think we call it junior high school, I had an art teacher, and I was drawing people, but I was drawing white people. And she said, Arvie, draw the people outside, draw the people out the window there. See those people out there? Draw those people. I didn't even know what she was talking about. Well, I went to an all-black school. She's talking about drawing black people. My grandfather gave me a book on Michelangelo. I copied everything in that book. But to me, that was art. That was art. Not those guys out there. This, of these white people that I'm drawing, that's art. Miss Brenner said, nah, draw those folks.
I didn't stay here long because shortly after, my mom moved us all to between Sherwood and Newburgh. And so I actually went to high school there. I felt it was like the most racist place because I was the only black child in my classroom. Sometimes there was a time when I was the only one in my whole school, and they were mean.
We were born on Rodney and Fremont on the corner. The house is still there.
As a child was Southwest Woods with my mom and my dad and my brothers and sister.
Before I moved to Portland, I grew up in the East Coast. I grew up right outside New York City in a tiny little suburb in the state of Connecticut. And it was a really, really white town. There was like, I think maybe 6 black families in the entire town. And of those 6, 4 of them were related to me.
A lot of people call me J-Dub. They call me K-Boo, Radio Man, Reverend, Pastor, or to the latter part of this, Shaka. And actually it turned from Shaka to Shaka Groovia. Community nut from way back. Came from San Antonio, Texas. And when you're from Texas, you think big.
I did go to school down the street at Ockley Green and Jefferson. Later I went to PCC, went to some other colleges. I went to Grambling.
I started school at NYU when I started my college career at NYU. Right outside of the campus, right outside the door, was jazz clubs I had to pass by to go to school. And I couldn't, and often when I'm supposed to be doing a paper, I'm sitting there listening to McCoy Tanner, Frank Foster, and other jazz greats. And I'm supposed to be doing my schoolwork. So I had recognized that I wasn't going to finish school if I didn't get out of here.
So at 11 years old, I was one of the co-founders of an organization called the Black People's Unity Movement. And as we were doing demonstrations for better housing, et cetera, and at around 11 or 12 years old, we had a demonstration. We're walking down the street, and we had a bullhorn encouraging people to come out and join us for better housing, et cetera. And somebody, one of them, handed the bullhorn to me. And I don't remember what I said, but I could see people 3 blocks away coming to their doors and looking at what was happening. And based on whatever it was I was saying, I could see them joining our march. That was my first taste of people's power.
I remember when I was growing up, I would come outside and I would hear people marching up and down the street saying, "We are the African people." And it was an exhilarating and a beautiful time to just be free and be black.
George Page doing jazz, the master blaster. As a matter of fact, and I have to say this, George, God rest your soul, he put me on Front Street because he asked me why I didn't play any blues on my show. And I told him there's no funk in the blues. And B.B. King was coming to town. He said, okay. So he got me these tickets to the B.B. King concert. And him and B.B. were great friends. I was in the second row. And in the middle of the concert, B.B. stopped, started talking to his guitar, Lucille. And he said, "Lucille, zoop, zoop." He said, "There's some young man, I don't know if he's backstage, front row, that he thinks there's no funk in the blues." And he made this funny sound like, "Really?" with the guitar, like, doo-doo-doo. And he said, "Can we show him that there's funk in the blues?" He said, 1, 2, 3, 4. And George Clinton and the Mothership landed in the middle of the B.B. King concert. That's the only way I can describe it. That band got so funky, so hot, and George was stage right, laughing at me, going, "I told you."
It was like a musical gumbo in my house all the time. There was always somebody with something playing or something. Bruce and Catone were my drummers at Jeff. I sang in the choir. I was a part of Mount Sinai, Church of God in Christ, where they believed in choir rehearsal for 4 and 5 hours.
In a weird way, I'm actually hyper aware of when there's a lot of black folks around, because to me, as a kid growing up, it was always a treat. Whenever we went someplace, we'd go into New York City, and when I got older, we would go up to Harlem, and I would hang out in Harlem all the time. And to me, that was just a great place to be, because it was like, there was just something, it was unlike what I was used to, but it was, there was just a tremendous spirit and energy there that I loved.
When I came to Portland, I was just passing through, and Portland had just won a basketball series. And I said, wow, this is a great place. I'm coming up from Los Angeles. The skies are blue up here.
Yeah, it rains in Portland. Absolutely it does, but it makes everything great. And because of that, we have these beautiful flowers, and we have these beautiful trees, and the air is clean, you know, and it's like, you can go a couple of hours, you can be at the ocean, go a couple more hours the other directions, you can be at the mountain. Who wouldn't want that?
I saw a terrific opportunity here, and I love the surrounding environment, the greenery.
And it was sunset, so it had that pink glow. And this is back in the days when you walked out of the airport, you could actually see the mountain, you know. I remember the first time I ever seen a snow-capped mountain in my life. And I walked out, I stopped right in the doorway, and I said to her, I said, we can turn right around and go right back and pack our bags, we're coming here. And that was it. That's how I got to Portland.
In my time away from Oregon, I had gotten a different perspective. In Detroit, which is a predominantly black city, is where I started being comfortable with wearing my hair natural, because they had whole salons where they only did natural hair, and there was some that they only did locks. Right? And so that is where I got my locks, and I came back to Portland just all full of, you know, my blackness, blackity, blackness. And so people didn't know how to like take me, and I didn't care, because this was the first time I felt really comfortable with how I was representing myself to the world.
I came to Portland in 1980, looking for a better life, looking for more safety, actually. In the big city, I'm originally from New York. Drugs really had decimated my community.
The white people that I encountered in Camden were there to administer to us, okay? So we, you know, there were white teachers, there were white police officers, there were white people running the stores, etc. And so we were like the colony, you know, and these were like the colonial administrators. So there was something fundamentally wrong with that picture, and I could sense the wrongness of it before I had words for it.
They wanted their property back, so we got a letter from a neo-Nazi threatening to burn us out if we didn't move out.
But it's that subtle violence that we experience every day that impedes your learning, impedes your performance. Having to think about how you're being perceived, having to think about, if I make a mistake, are they going to lay that on my race? You know, Tim McVeigh can go in and blow up a federal building. That doesn't stick to white folks.
3, 4. Salty eyes burn with decision made plain, stressing off the grave, given, driven by the man mind, kept intact for lack of the facts. Say fable, favor, conception, savor, missed by the mister, got him playing twister, stepping on my color with his left foot. See, he's about to fall, cause he forgot to put his right foot down, so he can be stable, letting loose the horses with the evil forces, and they're riding on me and my homies like a fierce pony, but I don't eat bologna and the bread that they love, be this condition.
In the summer, you would have Irvington Park, Woodlawn Park, we had Peninsula Park. There was something going on at every park. There were basketball tournaments and just fun things for kids to do and get together. I mean, it was a delight.
There would always be these like random brothers that showed up only in the summertime with big old fros that came from wherever they came from, and they would always be playing basketball in the park. We had concerts in the park that were nice. There was like Alberta Park was always popping.
We were out at Columbia Park, beautiful day, and I cannot remember what happened. You know, what triggered this negativity, if you will. And next thing you knew, the police had surrounded the park, and they were driving up in the park, and you know, people got angry and started throwing things and different things, and they decided to start arresting people. And they went after this one young man, and I will never forget it. And they thought that they were gonna cut him off with this car. They did not know that he was the state high hurdles champion. And man, now I'm gonna tell you this, Blake Griffin don't have nothing on this day. Blake jumped over a car in the NBA dunk contest, but on this day, hurdled that car in full stride and disappeared into the sunset. He didn't even go back to his own car. He just kept running. And the whole park just kind of busted out laughing. It was so funny. And at that point, people just began to naturally disperse. But that was one of the craziest days in the park.
this disconnect between what I was experiencing and what I could see on television, it began to get a name for itself. And this became the Black movement. And I was very much affected by that at a very early stage.
There was a woman that came to one of the schools when I was going to King, that was coming and teaching a lot of different, like, African languages and garb.
And so I wanted an experience at a historically Black college, and it was life-changing, being able to go to a college where there's mostly Black students and Black teachers. That was the first time I had ever experienced a Black teacher. And so it helped define me, it helped me find myself, it helped me get grounded in culture, and I started to really feel comfortable in my own skin.
I love that even though we're so far removed, we have a large number of folks who understand the power of going to a HBCU and will offer their students a chance to go and experience and tour places like that.
But it always stuck with me, and I knew that there was something to that for me. But it just allowed me to be able to sit in my skin differently and be proud of that and embrace it, even though I knew I was different than everybody that was around me, but at the same time part of this big community village, because those folks look just like me, and those are the folks that embraced me.
But my mom was a survivor. She always came up with whatever was needed. She made a way to find a way to get whatever was needed for the household. And many days my mom used to walk all the way from Southwest Portland, which was off of Wood Street between Barber Boulevard, walk all the way downtown, then tote them bags, walking back home. She didn't even take a bus. And I had to stay at the house with the other kids. And I was young, and they didn't move unless they had to go to the bathroom.
I actually ended up giving my own children the experience that I swore that I hated and I would never have, because they were in Southwest and they were the only Black kid in their classroom and they were the only Black kid in their neighborhood. And so, they grew up feeling a little out of place, and it was just circumstances that caused that to go from generation to generation. And so when I moved them into Northeast, they became much more aware of themselves and having friends who looked like them and that kind of thing. And I put my son, at the time he was in 8th grade, into Karanja Cruz's class when they had a boys' academy at Jefferson. Completely changed his life, and it was an amazing experience.
My dad, he just always had creative strategies. If you could ask him something, and he literally, his mind just went to work on issues, solving and addressing issues. And so I think that's what I inherited from him, is this creative strategies, this belief that there's a creative means to address some issue.
What I remember about my dad is getting his lunch pail every time he would come home after work. I'd hear him coming up the driveway, and I'd run out there and get his lunch pail. He always had something left in that lunch pail for me. I was raised by 2 parents, and I think it devastated me when my mom and dad split, and it was hard on all of us, but I think I took it the hardest.
I had a real mother, and when I say a real mother, she was 3-something. You understand? And we talk about forearm. Mom was dropping forearms back in the 60s, forearm smashes. But she was involved in the community. That was just it. She was involved in the community, NAACP, Urban League, of course, church.
My mother's friends made me like I am now. Miss Washington, Miss Dialworth, Mr. Dialworth, all the people that my mother that raised me hang around, and my mother, and my father. You see what I'm saying?
A lot of people thought I was too strict. A lot of friends thought I was too strict. There was people always coming up, oh, your children are acting so pro, and they, want to give us money or, reward us. But my kids wasn't allowed to stand up, and pour sugar in the water and act all whatever. No, they got beat down. They know it.
We have a lot of parents that are trying to be their kids' friends versus being their parents. Because I was raised in the era of where you showed out is where you got woe out. And it didn't matter by who. It didn't have to be your parents.
Back in the day, you couldn't talk back to them. You couldn't do like you do now. Because you got a beating.
Mama was very strict. Daddy didn't whoop us, but Mama did. I never got a spanking from my dad other than from his mouth. He would use mine on you and make you cry. But Mama, she tore up your butt.
At the end of the day, you held your family name high. You represented your family. And if somebody knew who your family was and you was disrepresenting your family, yeah, you'd have to pay for that.
That's how it was back in the day. See? That's how I was brought up.
There was a barbecue, some kind of family gatherings. People who actually were outside a whole lot more, just living and loving and barbecuing and, playing Frisbee. And there wasn't a whole bunch of dogs around here like we got right now.
And when you go along Williams and Vancouver now, it's completely unrecognizable. It's one of the most unrecognizable parts of this city. I recently had lunch there with a friend, and it literally felt like I was in another city.
Quite a bit of change has taken place in this area. Our community doesn't have the same number of gathering spaces. We certainly don't have the number of schools and things that were here. I don't know. Our community has changed.
In Portland, it's always been, Portland's such a largely white community, largely white city, that it was easy for me to adjust, but it was also the same thing where I would seek out black folks.
The usual typical success story is that a person living in the worst city in America, which is Camden has the dubious distinction of, will get themselves out of that situation by working really hard and rolling up their sleeves or applying their brain or getting real smart in school. And what you're supposed to do in that situation is go forward and never look back. And so very early on, I knew that was not the approach that I would use for my direction in life.
Even though many people in our community have been scattered all around, there's still a desire to gather. There's still ways that we're trying to do that. I do like social media for parts of that, but you can't replace that human touch.
Those are the sacrifices I made. I tried to pick a house or a neighborhood that looked like a place where you would want to raise your children and where you would, feel pride in being there.
But that's not to say that I want to be in terrible neighborhoods either. That's sort of the cry of a lot of black folks, is that we shouldn't have to be in the worst neighborhoods surrounded by poverty and crime just to be around our own people. We shouldn't have to be in a dangerous place just to feel like we're in a safe place.
People don't talk to each other anymore. They don't even know who their neighbors are, let alone go and be involved with them.
Once we were a community, now we have fences and property lines, and people don't talk to each other anymore. So things have changed. I guess Portland is becoming a big city.
One of the interesting things for me about living in Portland, having moved to Portland, I was in junior high, was that I explored it all the time. I would just hop on a bus and go to different neighborhoods, and I would go to the movies, and I would do all sorts of things. And the city really opened up to me. I had a sense of exploration. And as a result of that, I grew as a person, and as an artist. And even at, in junior high and high school, I was going out and I was meeting other young people that had similar interests that I had. And I never had that sort of thing growing up on the East Coast.
It was in Portland, though, that I have done more things creatively than I have done in any other city. It's where I felt like I've opened up and blossomed as a creative artist.
I'm a multilingual as an artist, not really deep on any of those specific things in terms of my painting, poetry, writing plays or songs or any of that stuff. I think I just, I want to give flight to what's inside.
I worked hard to learn what I learned about art. And one of the greatest joys for me is to pass that on. And an even greater joy is when I can pass that on to a person of color.
And so that's what made me like I am today. Like all those people now are gone. All of them, they're gone. But I never talked back to them. Never did. Better not.
When you lose a loved one, and especially a child, you always think about that. You think about, oh, maybe I shouldn't have did this, or, what if I had did this? You kind of regret some of the bad things that you feel bad about. But then, too, hopefully they'll thank you and say, well, Mom, you saved us. I guess I'll hear about that one day.
When I was much younger, I would have never thought that I would have had this statement, but I can't see myself living actually in any other city. I have invested a lot of time in Portland. I've defined who I am through my experiences and because of my work in Portland as a columnist for the Oregonian, and then as an artist, and now as a teacher. So there's so many lives I think that I've touched and built a foundation of defining what I want my legacy to be, that I can't imagine living anywhere else.
If it weren't for y'all, at Mad District and all that, doing what we were doing, we wouldn't be nothing. They said, Jay, thank you. No. It was y'all. And to everybody that was on Black Rock 88, it wasn't me, it was y'all wanting to dance.
And that's one of the things that makes Portland so beautiful. We have a large artist community, and I would not trade that in for anything. I was raised around it, and so it's like to be able to put my fingers into this rich clay and come out with something, and it's just like, from this mud, I am going to create anything that I want.
In the museum, one of the things I really responded to was a piece by Hooks, and she said, you resist when you tell your story. We all have a story. We all can resist. We must resist.
And I think that had I lived in another city, I don't know if I would have turned out the way I did, because there was access to so many things in this city that I never had access to before. Everything was fairly close by, whether it was museums or movie theaters or the library or even Powell's books, which I discovered at a really young age. And all of that had played an integral role in shaping who I am, shaping the artist that I would become, the storyteller that I would become. And for, not everything about Portland's great, but not everything about it's terrible either. And sometimes I have to remind myself of that, the person I am today, I am this person because of where I've lived the vast majority of my life. And, I guess that's a beautiful thing.
I'm glad my family moved to the Pacific Northwest. I did love the South. I moved to Houston later. I did love the South. But this is home for me.